Sarah Miller folded laundry as if it were a task that could keep her steady. The dryer hummed behind her, warm air filling the small room. And for a moment she let herself believe that the rhythm of folding shirts and jeans could quiet her thoughts. Outside, the neighborhood was calm, the kind of calm that came in late afternoons when children were still at school and adults were finishing work. Inside the house, the quiet felt heavier. She picked up a navy blue hoodie, slightly faded at the sleeves. It belonged to her son, Ethan. He wore it when he felt unsure, when he wanted comfort without saying so. Sarah smoothed the fabric with her hands, noticing how much bigger it looked than it had a year ago. He was growing fast. Too fast. Her life had narrowed in recent years. Work, home, dinner, sleep. She did not complain. She told herself this was stability. But some afternoons, like this one, the silence felt louder than noise. Her husband had been gone for 5 years now, and while the pain had softened, it had never disappeared. It had simply settled into her daily routine, like a shadow that followed her everywhere. She placed the hoodie on the pile and reached for another shirt. When she heard footsteps in the hallway, Ethan appeared in the doorway, tall and thin, his hair still damp from a shower. He leaned against the frame, watching her. She noticed he did not speak right away. "What's up?" she asked, keeping her voice light. "Nothing," he said, then hesitated. "Well, maybe something—" She turned toward him, sensing his nervous energy. "You can talk to me." He nodded, took a breath, then asked, "Mom, are you happy?" The question struck her harder than she expected. She had prepared for questions about school, friends, college plans. She had not prepared for this. For a second, she forgot how to answer. She looked at her son, at the concern in his eyes, and felt something twist in her chest. "I'm fine," she said at first, then corrected herself. "I'm okay." Ethan frowned slightly. He did not argue, but the answer did not satisfy him. He nodded once, as if storing the moment away, then stepped back into the hallway. "Okay." Sarah stood there, the laundry basket half full, her hands still. She wondered when her son had started noticing the quiet things. When he had started seeing past her smiles, she finished folding quickly, trying to shake the feeling. Just as she stacked the last towel, the doorbell rang. The sound was sharp and unexpected. Sarah glanced at the clock. It was early for visitors. They rarely had any. "I'll get it," Ethan called from the living room. Sarah followed him, curiosity pulling her along. Ethan reached the front door and opened it without hesitation. A man stood outside holding a small paper bag, his posture unsure but polite. "Hi," the man said. "I'm Daniel." Sarah stopped short. She recognized him immediately. Daniel Harper, the new English teacher at Ethan's school. She had met him once at a parent meeting a few months earlier. They had exchanged polite words. It seemed kind, a little reserved, with an easy smile. "Mom," Ethan said quickly, stepping aside. "I invited him." The words hung in the air. Sarah looked at her son, then at Daniel, then back at her son. Her heart began to race. "You invited him?" she asked, her voice calm but strained. Ethan nodded. "I thought it would be nice." Daniel shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "I hope this is okay," he said. "Ethan said you wouldn't mind." Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. A dozen thoughts rushed through her mind. This was unexpected. This was sudden. This was crossing a line she had carefully drawn around her life. And yet something else stirred beneath the surprise. A feeling she had not allowed herself to feel. "It's fine," she said finally. "Please, come in." Daniel stepped inside, thanking her. The house suddenly felt smaller, more alive. Ethan smiled briefly, then excused himself, mumbling something about homework. He disappeared upstairs, leaving Sarah alone with a man she barely knew and a situation she did not understand. They stood awkwardly for a moment before Sarah gestured toward the kitchen. "Would you like some coffee?" "That would be great," Daniel said. They sat at the table, the paper bag resting between them. Daniel explained it was pastries from a local bakery. Sarah thanked him, her hands trembling slightly as she poured. Coffee, she noticed the way he watched her, not intrusively, but with genuine interest. "I hope this isn't strange," Daniel said. "Ethan just mentioned you've been busy lately, that you don't get many visitors." Sarah smiled politely. "He worries too much. He cares." Daniel replied. She looked down at her cup. The truth of that statement pressed against her chest. "Yes," she said quietly. "He does." They talked easily after that. About school, about teaching, about how teenagers were more observant than adults realized. Daniel spoke gently. Thoughtfully, he did not push. He listened. At one point, he mentioned losing his wife a few years earlier. The words were simple, not heavy, but they connected them instantly. Sarah felt a sense of understanding pass between them. Not pity. Recognition, time. Moved faster than she expected. When Daniel finally stood to leave, the light outside had softened. He hesitated at the door. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said, "but I'm glad I came." Sarah nodded. "So am I." After he left, the house felt quiet again, but different. Not empty. Thoughtful. Later that evening, as Sarah folded the last of the laundry in her bedroom, she found a note tucked under a pillow. Ethan's handwriting was uneven, hurried. "You deserve to be happy, Mom." She sat down on the bed, holding the note, her eyes filling with tears she did not try to stop. For the first time in a long while, the quiet did not feel like a burden, and she realized that something had shifted, something she could not yet name, but could no longer ignore. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around the warm mug of coffee, staring at Daniel as he spoke. The quiet in the house, after Ethan had gone upstairs, made every word feel heavier, more significant. She had not expected him to come into their home, had certainly not expected him to stay long enough to fill the silence. But here he was, speaking calmly, sincerely, his eyes never leaving hers. And she felt something she hadn't felt in years, a flutter of nervous excitement. Daniel set the paper bag down gently and opened it. Inside were pastries, simple, fresh, and thoughtfully chosen. "I thought we could share these," he said, offering a small smile. Sarah felt herself soften. It was a small gesture, but it carried meaning. Someone had thought about her, about them, enough to bring this. It was simple, but in this quiet house it felt monumental. They ate slowly, each bite punctuating the conversation. Daniel asked about Ethan's school, his interests, and subtly about Sarah's life. He didn't pry, didn't make her uncomfortable, but he asked just enough to make her feel seen, as though her thoughts and feelings mattered. It was disarming. She realized how long it had been since someone had genuinely wanted to know about her, not as a mother, not as a widow, not as a friend, but as a woman. The awareness made her heart race. Sarah found herself laughing softly at a story Daniel told about a student misreading a Shakespeare passage. The sound surprised her. It had been so long since she had laughed, like that, light, unguarded, effortless. She noticed the subtle changes in her body, the tension in her shoulders easing, the tightness in her chest loosening. It was as though the walls she had built around herself, carefully constructed over 5 lonely years, were quietly yielding. Daniel watched her with a gentle attentiveness that made her feel both exposed and safe. She remembered their brief meeting months ago, the fleeting smiles, the small gestures of kindness that had been etched into her memory. But this was different. This was real. This was present. He wasn't just polite or charming. He was genuinely interested. And it ignited something inside her she thought had long vanished. "I didn't want to intrude," Daniel said, finally, breaking a comfortable silence. His voice was low, steady, sincere. I'm glad. Ethan mentioned you. I didn't want to miss the chance to meet you properly." Sarah's hands tightened around the mug. She felt the urge to speak, to say something meaningful, but the words wouldn't come immediately. She simply nodded. "I'm glad you came," she admitted quietly. The simplicity of the words felt heavier than any long speech. They talked for a while longer, moving into deeper topics. Daniel shared more about his own life, about loss, about finding the courage to continue despite grief. He didn't dwell, didn't seek sympathy. He simply told his truth. Sarah found herself opening up in return, recounting memories of her husband, of the quiet days with Ethan, of the small victories and losses that had shaped her. She spoke with honesty, with vulnerability, and found that Daniel listened without judgment, with care. Time passed unnoticed. The sky outside had shifted from afternoon brightness to the softer hues of early evening. Sarah glanced at the clock, surprised. She had expected the conversation to be short, polite, restrained. Instead, they had shared hours in a way that felt natural, like old friends reconnecting. Only the connection ran deeper than friendship. Daniel finally stood, a subtle hesitation in his movement. He smoothed his shirt as though bracing for something. "I should go," he said, almost reluctantly. "I don't want to overstep." Sarah felt a sudden pang of disappointment. The thought of him leaving, even temporarily, unsettled her more than she expected. She realized she didn't want this moment to end, didn't want the sense of connection and warmth to disappear into the quiet again. "I'd like to see you again," Daniel said, his voice steady but carrying a note of vulnerability. "Only, if you want that," Sarah considered the words. Her first instinct was caution, the instinct that had kept her careful and solitary for years. But then she thought of Ethan, the way he had quietly encouraged this, the way he had noticed her loneliness and tried to bridge the gap. She thought of the laughter she had felt that afternoon, of the calm but alive sense of presence Daniel brought into the room, and she realized that her instinct, the one that had kept her from taking chances, might be wrong this time. "I think," she said slowly, "I'd like that." The words felt monumental, even as they were spoken softly. She felt a small thrill in admitting it, a release in acknowledging that her heart could still respond, still hope, still feel. Daniel smiled, that careful, gentle smile, and it held a warmth that made her chest ache in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. After he left, Sarah remained at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the empty doorway, the silence, returning but transformed. It was no longer heavy or suffocating. It was reflective, charged with a sense of possibility. She felt the stirrings of hope, fragile and tentative, but real. The quiet had been broken, not just by a visitor, but by a presence that had reminded her she could still feel alive later that night. After folding the last of the laundry in her bedroom, she found a note tucked under her pillow. Ethan's handwriting was uneven, hurried, unmistakably his. She unfolded it carefully, reading the words, "You deserve more than just being okay." Her chest tightened. She pressed the note to her heart, feeling the truth of it resonate deep inside. Ethan had noticed, even if she hadn't, that her life had settled into safety and routine, and that perhaps she needed more than that, needed the chance to love, to connect, to feel again. Her son had quietly opened the door for her, and now it was up to her to step through it. Sarah sat there holding the note, letting the warmth of the day, of Daniel's presence, of her son's thoughtful encouragement, settle around her. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond quiet afternoons and folded laundry, a life where laughter returned, where conversations lasted longer than expected, where connections weren't fleeting, where her heart could open without fear. She realized that the biggest surprise of the day hadn't been Daniel showing up, hadn't been the pastries, hadn't even been the gentle invitation from her son. The real surprise was the reminder that life could still offer her unexpected joy, that love and warmth could return when she had almost forgotten they existed. And for the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to believe that the quiet house she had built for herself could one day be filled again with laughter, with conversation, and maybe, just maybe, with love.